Hi guys. It's been a while, but Ted and I have both finally finished another Dragon Quest game with the recently released in the US remake of Dragon Quest VII: Fragments of the Forgotten Past. So we're gonna talk about it for a while. Uh,
I love how you said recently, even though in Japan this game is like old news. It'd be like, oh man, guys, we're just gonna talk about this brand new game that came out. It's called Pokemon X and Y. uh,
well, that's why I
uh,
said recently released in the US
yeah.
because yeah.
I just,
So
I kind of want to bring that up though. 3 years. It took 3 years for this remake to come out in the West. Like, I didn't think we were gonna get it
no.
actually by like the time a year or two passed. That's a long time to not have the game come out, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, I'm surprised that we got it at all. So, I mean, grateful. I'm grateful that we got it at all, but just really
And
surprised.
Ted, if I remember correctly, you watched a very interesting panel, which I keep forgetting to tell you to send me, about the localization process with the team that does the Dragon Quest localizations, and they
Yeah,
mentioned that a big reason for localizing Dragon Quest VII and VIII, the 3DS remakes outside of Japan, was a really huge movement of letters, especially from people in France. So, hearing something like that, it's super encouraging to think that campaigns like that, people writing letters or sending emails via social media or whatnot can really make a difference. And I feel like Dragon Quest is in that state right now where, you know, fan support can really push Square Enix to really localize new games, and that's really encouraging. So.
yeah. The panel's great. It was done at PAX East. It was run by Nintendo staff and people from Square Enix. They actually had some of the Japanese staff um, on as well. It was a great panel. I'll have to DM it to you. Remind me when we're done, and I'll send it to you.
You could
It's
just
it's it,
you could put a link in the description of this video in case the listeners are also curious.
That's like work, man.
It's the same amount of work. But yeah, so yeah, the game that we just played is a remake of a game that was released for the PlayStation 1 in 2000 in Japan, 2001 in North America, which was originally called Dragon Quest VII: Warriors of Eden. So I would like to reiterate that this is a game that was released in 2000 after Final Fantasy IX. I don't know if it was after Final Fantasy X, but I'm pretty sure Final Fantasy X was
It
released
was
in
close.
2000. It
It
was
was
very
close.
close.
People were oogling those Final Fantasy X screenshots, and if you've ever seen Dragon War, let's just for clarity's sake, let's refer to the PlayStation 1 version as Dragon Warrior 7 because that's
Yes.
how we got it in the States at the time.
Yes.
If you look at screenshots of Dragon Warrior 7 for the time, it is ugly.
It's still sprite based. It's like pretty like nice looking for sprites, I guess, but when I look at the color palette from screenshots I've seen, honestly they look a little muddy, and I don't know if that's partly because of whatever capture was used to make those screenshots, but it honestly I don't think what I've seen looks as good as the DS remakes of 4 and
No,
5. It's
I don't agree. I agree
and
100%.
I think there was some 3D like environments, but
Yeah, I think about as much 3D as you got in the DS versions,
okay.
pretty
So
much.
the characters were all sprites. The monsters looked gorgeous, but they were sprites. Um, so it's really no wonder this game did not do well in the US, where I think, number one reason it doesn't look great compared
No.
to the games that were really catching everyone's attention in the US. Number two, it's a very long game. The
Oh
original
yes.
was known as taking over 100 hours to beat, even without side quests. They made the remake better in that regard, but it's still, I think
It's
it would
still an
be at
80-hour game.
absolutely.
It's still an 80 cuz you definitely did a lot more side questy stuff than I did a fair amount. I did a lot of the side quest content, I would call it, but I didn't like go out of my way to like find every monster or anything like that until after I beat the game. And my playtime was still over 80 hours by the time I was done. So the base game is one of the longest on the 3DS's library already, on par. It's longer than like Bravely Default or any one given playthrough of Shin Megami Tensei 4 or things like that. It's a strange game, and I'm not surprised that the game didn't do great on the PlayStation
In the
because
U.S. In the U.S. Let's clarify.
I need to. The game is the best-selling PlayStation game of all time in Japan.
According to the numbers we've seen, we know that it sold about 4.1 million units in Japan on the PlayStation, and it sold like 30. What was it? It was very low in the U.S. I think.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was less than 100,000. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. It's definitely low numbers.
And unfortunately, this remake has not done well in the U.S. either.
I'm pretty sure that was like 30,000 for the first couple of weeks.
Yep, I saw 35,000.
Yeah, and granted, the game has a much longer shelf life, I would imagine, because it's going to be on the 3DS eShop forever, pretty much. So it's not like, for example, like the original Dragon Warrior 7 is a really hard game to find nowadays because there aren't many copies of it, and finding one in good condition as well is difficult. You don't have to deal with that for Dragon Quest VII 3DS because it's a remake. It's completely digital. Anybody can download it at any time, so it's not going anywhere. And so I'm sure that over time the numbers will be better. Like, it might creep up into the 100,000 range, but it wasn't a slam dunk. Yeah, obviously. I just hope
that Square breaks even on it, because I'd feel bad if they went through all the trouble of localizing it, and Nintendo, I believe, helped them publish it.
Yeah, Nintendo helps publish a lot of Dragon Quest games, but I agree 100% because part of the reason why Dragon Quest VII didn't get remade is because of the massive localization work it would take. Because the game's the longest Dragon Quest game in the series. It's got the most dialogue of the entire Dragon Quest game in the series. They have pictures of the script for the game, and it takes up entire bookshelves. Yeah. Like, there's paper stacked everywhere, and they had to manually take that and translate it and localize it all over again because the old translation's out of date. So
from what I've seen and heard about the original Dragon Warrior PlayStation 1 translation, it was very much a direct translation of the Japanese text. It was like, we're going to try to translate this as closely as possible. One thing that I will acknowledge that was a good thing is they didn't remove any content or attempt to make it more of a kiddie game. Like, the game was rated teen. I'm looking at the box art right now.
It was?
The game was rated teen on the PlayStation. They didn't try to tone anything down. That's really good. But
that was before the E10 rating appeared, because E10 rating appeared 2004, I think. Donkey Kong Jungle Beat came out. Most Dragon Quest games seem to aim for that teen rating, but there are some aim for that E10 rating. Sorry. But some go for, because E10's what the new version's rated, but I'm pretty sure Dragon Quest VIII 3DS will be rated teen. I wouldn't be surprised if Dragon Quest XI comes out in the States, if that's rated teen, that wouldn't surprise me either.
But yeah, so the original translation was very much just a direct translation, and since that time, the recent Dragon Quest translations have adopted more of a localized feel, where they add in things like regional accents. They add in a lot more humor, which is closer to what the Japanese version, to my understanding, plays as. The Japanese version does have puns and humor to it. So they need to basically completely redo that entire bookshelf of scripts. So I'm really glad we got this game, just because, I mean, regardless of how well it does commercially, regardless of whether I think it's, a particularly good Dragon Quest game or not, it's just such a work, such a huge game and such a huge undertaking. So I'm really glad we got it for just what it stands for,
I am too, especially since, being introduced to the series with Dragon Quest IV DS, I really like the translation model that they've taken with the series ever since I believe the first game to start the new translation model was Dragon Quest VIII on the PS2. And every game after that has been very consistent with its translation. With it both in terms of like what spell names are called and things like that, but also just in terms of a general structure and such. So I have gone back and tried some of the older games, and particularly like the Game Boy Color. It's weird because there's basically like 3 eras of translation to Dragon Quest. There's the NES translations, which had their own kind of weird localization with the fake Elizabethan. And there's the modern games. And then around the PlayStation era, where we got the remakes of 1, 2, and 3, and Dragon Quest VII, Dragon Warrior 7, they had a very weird translation at that point, which it's plenty readable, and it's not like it's not like a Final Fantasy IV SNES tier translation, but it's definitely not as, I guess, I don't think clean is necessarily the best
Does
word,
it not
but it's
have
not
as
as
much
elegant.
heart to it? Like, because
yeah, it feels like something's missing if you've played the later games, I guess is the best way to put it.
I've noticed that from the dialogue that I've seen in watching your Dragon Quest III streams, that like while it's coherent and it makes sense in ways that, like, the one I can think of actually, which I think is a really good comparison because this was published by Enix, the game Robotrek, developed by Quintet Studios and published by Enix in the US. That game just has a number of sentences that just do not make sense, or like are, like, I can tell were just literally translated in a way that doesn't make sense in English. So when I look at Dragon Quest III, I don't see that level, but I don't see the same, it still doesn't feel necessarily like it was translated by a native English speaker who understood how the Japanese text was supposed to read. Yeah.
It feels old, I guess is the best way to put it. It feels very much like a PlayStation 1 translation. Like somewhere between Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VIII or IX in terms of that. So, like, I mean, I don't think I ever really have any desire to go back to the PlayStation version of Dragon Quest VII. It's a long enough game already. I don't know.
Yeah, if it weren't so long, I'd be tempted, but if it's long and expensive, it's like, I'm fine having it on my 3DS, but yeah. So speaking of the length of the game, the structure of this game is very different than really any other Dragon Quest game released to date, because most Dragon Quest games put you in a world, and your ability to, like, in some games you really are able to go almost anywhere, and you just are limited by like beef wall, it's called, right, when the enemies are just too tough, and okay, maybe I shouldn't be going there. And sometimes it's geographic, like, okay, I can't get past, I'm on this continent that's surrounded by water on 2 sides, and there's impassable mountains on 1 side, so I guess I'll go to the only side I can. This game, you start off on an island surrounded by water, and everyone tells you, like, yo, this is the world. I love how everyone is just so resolute, like, there's nothing else out there, we just know it,
Yeah, those old people and their lack of thinking. Oh man, back in my day, we didn't accept the state of the world as we've known it ever since childhood. We liked it.
And there's no monsters in the world. It's a completely peaceful world with, like, 1 little fishing village and 1 little town and a castle. But as you progress through the game, you use these fragments to unlock basically teleportals to various islands that used to exist in the past, and you kind of have to, like, solve their problems, and once you do, those islands reappear in the present. So you start off on this completely, like, your world map basically just has 1 island on it, and as you progress through the game, you're slowly populating that world map with more and more islands that you've saved in the past. So.
And I will give the game that there is a really kind of cool feeling to seeing the kind of empty world map at the beginning of the game and then watching it kind of grow over the course, because it's kind of shows how far you've gotten in progression. That's kind of more it's just as visible as like seeing your level go up, but it feels more substantial when it's just like, oh wow, you can literally see how much of the world you have saved.
Yeah.
And so that's really cool, but obviously this structure comes with its own kind of quirks, I guess, in that when I was going into this game, I expected it to have the same sort of non-linearity that a lot of the other Dragon Quest games do. Like, the way that most Dragon Quest games are structured, pretty much from 2 onwards, for the most part, is that the game starts, like, the first 3 or 4 hours typically are mostly kind of linear, and then you get your boat. And then the game becomes mostly non-linear if you can somehow handle the enemies that are around. And then as you like get more and more MacGuffins or whatever, you solve all the things all around the world, eventually you'll get the means to like get an airship or go fight the final boss or whatever. So when I was playing this, I was kind of expecting that, so the way that they're gonna do it is that we'll have the option to, like, after a certain amount of gameplay, we'll have the option to explore a handful of different islands in any given order. And that's not really how it works.
No.
Like, up until I'd say about like the halfway point, I would even say. Like, maybe by the halfway point, you'll have the option of, you can do these 2 or 3 islands in any order you want. But other than that, it's a very, very linear game for Dragon Quest standards. Like, I'd say even more linear than a lot of Final Fantasies, which are normally very, very linear RPGs. So, it feels more restrictive than the system kind of seems like it could have been, I guess. And part of what makes it like that is because the fragments are specific. Like, you need to find specific fragments in specific parts of the world in order to open specific islands. It's not like finding power stars in Mario, in 3D Mario,
Yeah.
I guess.
Each fragment has its own model. In the there's a tiny mini game where you place the fragments onto a pedestal to unlock a new island, and a fragment that, like, each fragment can only fit in one spot on one pedestal. So if I get, even though they're called like yellow fragments, you don't have a choice about which pedestal you can unlock with your yellow fragments. The yellow fragments will only open up this one island, and you will only have enough to open up that one island, save until the very end of the game, where you do end up with enough fragments that you have a choice between like 2 or 3 islands at a time.
And to be fair, like, it would have been very easy to end up in like a dead game if they let you, like, or like a completely unbeatable game, like if you open up an endgame endgame island, like when you've only got 2 characters or whatever. But still, it felt very restrictive. And like, I mean, well, I should mention the ways that the remake improved the system from the original, because in the original game, you basically just had to make sure that you saw the tablets and talk to everybody and make sure that you get all the tablets, because if you miss one, you're kind of boned. You have to painstakingly go through the entire world in order to find it. In the remake, they added a little tablet finder, and it's in the corner, and it'll blink when you're in an area where there's a tablet. And once there's no more tablets in that area, it will go off, so you know that you found everything. And also, if you go into the menu, you can select next fragment, and it'll show you the list of all the fragments that can currently be found at any time. And it won't, like, hand it to you. It'll just say, like, in this dungeon or in this town, you can find a fragment.
And it will tell you if it's in the past or the present, because once you save an island, you can still go back there to the past. So it'll say, like, I sense there is a fragment in present day Emberdale. Talk to try talking to people. So it will give you hints. And there's also there's various ways that the game can give you hints and make it make it easier for you if you're stuck. It tries. It's not always successful. I'm looking at you, Rainbow Cove. That was never mentioned.
Oh, the stupid Rainbow Cove part. Oh, man. I don't know. Like, it's just like you need to... I don't even remember when in the game you need to go to Rainbow Cove, but it's just like, oh yeah, go into this teleportal where the room was locked earlier in the game, and the door just magically unlocks for no good reason.
And you have to know
partway through the game,
yep,
and you have to know that it unlocked. And
you have to know that the plot item you were told to get can be found in Rainbow Cove. I remember I was thinking the last time I needed a plot item, like, of that, like, I got it from the hero's crappy uncle. So I went looking for him, and you were like, why did you think he would help you? And I was like, I don't know. Just a guess. Maybe.
Yeah, but they called it the Rainbow Cove, and I didn't even really know what that was. No. So I searched in the Rainbow Mine, which is the first dungeon of the game, and I went over every inch of that goddamn mine for like an hour trying to find that item, and it just wasn't there. Oh man. But anyway, I don't think we really talked about the Oh wait, no, you wanted to talk about that later. Okay, never mind.
So that's kind of how the game progresses, but as far as the battle system,
wait, hold on. Oh wait, never mind. I was gonna talk about the beginning, but that's probably because the structure of the game is very different at the very beginning than the rest of the game. But that's probably more suited for when we're talking about the plot, because but the battle system is interesting.
Yeah,
well,
so it's
sort of
similar. The interface is very similar. It's very similar to past Dragon Quest games, with the added bonus of, like, because this entire game is rendered in 3D, you can actually see your characters attacking the monsters. So that's a cute little touch. But this is one of the Dragon Quest games alongside 3 and 6 and 9, as far to my knowledge, that has a class or job system. So any character can basically pick a vocation, but what's strange is this job system unlocks, like, 20 hours into the game?
Yeah.
Something like that. 20 hours into the game, you get access to a location called All Trades Abbey, where you can change your vocation from the default, like, no vocation, to various vocations matching the sort of standard classes of the Dragon Quest system, and some added ones like Sailor and Shepherd. Shepherd is best job.
Best job.
This is where you put a picture of someone in the Shepherd outfit so people understand how amazing it is.
Yeah, but it's the battle system. It's very reminiscent of Dragon Quest VI the most.
Which I have not
Dragon
played.
Quest III,
I'll just say that.
Yeah. Because Dragon Quest III had a class system as well, but that was obviously an NES game, so it's very different than that. The closest comparison is Dragon Quest VI. It works very, very similarly to Dragon Quest VI. There's only minor changes, but the thing is that much like Dragon Quest VI, you get the class system strangely late into the game. It's something that you really want to play around with, obviously, because that's what a class system is good for, but up until, like, I think in, like, Dragon Quest VI, it's, like, 10 hours or so until you get the class system. In Dragon Quest VII, it's 20. And up until that point, you're, like, level, like, 10, 15 by the time you get to it. And up until that point, like, nobody has any skills. So, for the most part, you're having everybody just whack the attack button and having Maribel cast Frizz the entire time.
Ruff and Kiefer get a couple skills.
Get a couple of skills, but it feels... it makes
super
early game combat... super boring, actually. There's no strategy to anything in the early game up until, like, the area right before All Trades Abbey, where they take all your skills away. But that just becomes really, really annoying because so, and it's strange because my biggest complaint about Dragon Quest VII, I think, is that the class system and the abilities never become balanced. I feel, except for like the first 10 or so hours after you come to All Trades Abbey, it feels balanced, but the beginning of the game, you don't feel like you have anything, and so battles are kind of boring. But by the time you, just in case you're unfamiliar with Dragon Quest class systems, basically, like, you level up in a class, you get more skills. That's pretty standard for any RPG. Once you master a class, you can change to a different class, and you will keep the skills that you got from that class when you move to a different class. So you can have a fighter with healing spells, for instance. What makes this feel kind of broken is that, okay, you've got, you've cleared the priest and the fighter class, so now you can have a mage with fighter and priest skills, and now you go to a knight, and now you've got a knight with fighter, priest, and mage skills. And so if you focus on those base classes and try to get everybody to have them, everybody can do everything really, really quickly. And what makes matters worse is they try to balance this, I will say, by having advanced classes not carry their skills over. So that makes things feel a little bit more balanced, but then you get monster classes. And monster classes not only give you really good skills that are often second tier skills that you get to keep on you forever, but many of those skills don't cost MP. So by the time you get like 30, 40 hours into the game, which, considering that this is Dragon Quest VII, is not even halfway into the game, you're able to do screen clearing attacks that do massive damage for no MP every single turn. And the game becomes very broken very easily. And granted, breaking games is fun. That's part of the reason why I loved Bravely Default and Bravely Second so much, because there were so many fun ways to break that game in terms of boss fights, but there was always a cost to it. It always felt like you were running some kind of strategy where you had to keep up with it. Like, you know, the Black Knight in Bravely Default, you could do great damage, but you had to keep healing him because it drained his own health, or things like that. There's no sacrifice to many of the best moves in Dragon Quest VII, because you can just breathe fire on all of the enemies every turn for no MP, and you can just wipe through random encounters no problem. This is probably the easiest Dragon Quest game I've ever played. And there's only like 2 or so before you beat the super bosses are hard, but by the time you get to endgame, there's, I think, only like 1 or 2 bosses that were really trying.
And I think for me, and one thing I will say as a problem is, if you are sometimes it feels like you need to get someone through a crappy vocation to get to a better one. Like, the best example of that is if you want someone to be a druid, which is the best magic user in the game, you have to master Sage, which is like a really good magic user, and Luminary. Luminary is like, to do Luminary, you have to master Troubadour, which learns like songs, Dancer, which learns dances that have a variety of effects, and Jester. So for me, I think there was one point at which I had someone in like either Jester, Troubadour, or Dancer, and when you're in one of those classes, your damage output is bad. Your spells aren't great either. And
you can do support stuff, but again, as we've the support stuff isn't terrible. We should mention, like, just like any other Dragon Quest games, it does actually feel worth it to like paralyze or put to sleep enemies, but you don't really need to do it because your damage output can be so great with other stuff.
And also that sort of stuff doesn't work against bosses. Like, I remember I had one instance against, it was the wind boss who kept summoning like the sky.
Oh yeah, that's like one of the only hard bosses in the game.
Because the problem is he keeps summoning, and he can have up to like 4 or 5 of them on screen along with the boss, these minions that will cast snooze. So like half my party would be asleep all the time, so I just was trying to like wake them up, because nobody really had any good crowd clearing moves at that time, just because of the classes I had people in. So I told Ted, like, I texted Ted, I'm like, I am having so much trouble with this boss, here's what my class system is. And he was like, I suggest you go to All Trades Abbey, make someone like a monster masher, because a fully maxed monster masher, which I'd maxed on a few of the people, has Scorch, which hits every enemy and does really good damage. Once I did that,
free.
What was that? For free. Yep. No MP.
No
costs.
MP.
Once I did that, no problem. Got, like, it was, it still wasn't the easiest boss, but no one was like, it wasn't like everyone was falling asleep.
Yeah.
So
you
yeah.
didn't also do monsters that much, though?
No.
Yeah, because monsters can give you broken abilities very early on, like Thin Air, or Boulder Toss, or Scorch,
I didn't
or
get good
whatever.
drops. I got really
Oh,
bad
yeah,
drops because that's the other problem, that to go into monster classes, per character who wants to learn that monster class, you need a monster heart. And the monster hearts drop from monsters, but so first of all, I don't even know what the drop rates are for them, but some of them don't even drop from like the monsters you would think. Like golem hearts don't drop from golems, they drop from some completely different monster.
Well, there's only one golem in the game.
And he's a boss,
That's
and
a
he
boss
doesn't
fight.
drop a heart.
Yeah.
But
I mean, granted, you can find them in chests, but they're very rare.
yeah,
You'll get like one good monster heart in one chest at some point, you know? So you need to be careful about how you use them. And monster classes I wish were better explained too, because
Yeah.
you can get certain monster classes by mastering other monsters, if that makes sense. Like if you master a slime and it's like a drake something.
a mandrake
Like
major.
a mandrake, which is a kind of dragon. If you master those two, you get the ability to do a drake slime, which makes sense because, you know, slime dragon.
Without needing the heart, I will add. So like
Yeah.
in that case,
The game
you don't need the heart.
doesn't tell you.
The game
doesn't tell you
that. Game does not tell you that there are certain ridiculously overpowered monster classes that can only be gotten by using this monster class tier system. These monsters will not drop their hearts. So
Yeah, and I think I was lucky because I decided early game, okay, I'm gonna have Ruff do pretty much only monster classes. So, and even then, I didn't do the combinations in the right way to unlock any monster classes that way, you know? Because it's very, very specific.
Yeah.
And a lot of the early ones, you will find hearts for anyway, you know?
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, you gotta do an automaton and a golem in order to get whatever. I wish it was listed somewhere. Like, obviously, you don't have to tell us right when we get job systems. But, like, if it were listed somewhere and we could find it,
yeah.
then that would have been great. Because it would have been good to know. Because I think monster classes are probably one of the most broken things about the entire game.
Yeah.
Really.
So when they made the remake, they did do some things to attempt to balance the job system. What they did that's different in the 3DS version from the original is, first of all, in the original version, you didn't lose your advanced class skills. Like if you mastered Sage and then switched to Luminary, you would still have Kazing, which is the spell you learn as a Sage.
Damn.
When you master Sage. Yeah.
Oh, that would have been broken as shit.
So they removed that, but what they changed was that they made it easier to progress in the class system, and also the game has these things called Traveler's Tablets, which are basically free DLC, and then you can also make these tablets. They're basically mini dungeons that have specific monsters in them. Any battle in a Traveler's Tablet will increase your progression, whereas in the normal game, you're not supposed to be able to just grind low-level enemies to progress in your class. You're supposed to grind, like, you're supposed to fight enemies that actually have some semblance of challenge. That is not always the case, because at some point the game runs out of tough enemies and it still lets you progress. But so the Traveler's Tablets and the fact that they lowered the number of enemies needed to progress in the vocation system, it makes it easier to level up. But honestly, I feel like, yeah, I agree, the monster classes are so broken. Like, I feel like at that point they should have just let us keep the advanced class abilities, because it's just a pain more than anything that, like, oh, nobody has Kazing now because, like, oh, I had Mervyn master Sage, but now I need to have him do Luminary, so nobody in my party has Kazing. Like, it's just frustrating.
So you feel more like you. Yeah, it's
like if I went through the trouble of mastering the class, I'd like to keep the abilities. I don't like this arbitrary, I can only keep the abilities if it's a monster class. Like, so I found a heal.
Yeah, you can heal. Yeah, because I think we should restate. Like, you can get Kaboom, Kazing to be on you permanently no matter what class you have. It's just you got to find the monster that learns it.
Yeah.
You know?
And getting
So-
some of these hearts is really hard. Like, I've had really bad luck. I had to grind for probably over half an hour to get a single Drake Slime heart, and I was grinding in a tablet where these things are supposed to have a higher chance of dropping. I just could not get one to drop. I managed to get one Heal Slime heart. That was great. But yeah, it's so annoying. And again, I wish the game explain to you how this monster system worked, because they explain to you what class, like there's a, the game tells you what classes you need to access the advanced classes. It doesn't hide that. So at that point, like, they should have, I agree with you, Ted. I don't think it should have been like in part of the massive like info dump that was unlocking the original vocation system. But it's not too far after that we get Not Again, which has, the monsters involved in that. That would have been great if, as part of Not Again, you save Not Again, and they explain to you, like, how the monster system works, and maybe, they give you a heart or two. Like, that would have been great, because, it's a weird class system. Like, I think, I agree with you, like, there's a lot of things that are weird about it, but to me, I do find it kind of, it's fun to see how broken it can get.
It's fun. Like, I think we've been kind of negative. We should stress that the game is still fun. It's Dragon Quest. Dragon Quest is fun. It's just part of what makes Dragon Quest interesting to me is that it feels challenging but fair. And if I want to play an easier RPG, I play other franchises for that, And, I think even it's not just a monster class problem. Like, I feel like one thing that would have helped is having more tier 2 and tier 3 classes. Because, like, you
tier
don't,
3,
like, some of the tier
3 especially, because
because some of the tier 2 classes are useless. Like, why would you ever make anyone an armamentalist? Because that doesn't bring you towards anything.
No, why would
if you're having someone as an armament,
like, I did that before I realized how stupid it was, and like, okay, I can make someone an armamentalist, and then they learn some pretty cool abilities like Flame Sword and like Crack, like whatever. Like, pretty cool abilities. But guess what? They'll master that class, and then if I want them to get any more like vocation stuff, I'm gonna have to change their class, and then they lose all those cool abilities. So yeah, they should have, like, that's where the original system where you kept the advanced class skills actually made sense, because then there was a point to armamentalist and to pirate. So they tried to balance it, but honestly, I think they made it worse. They made it so there's no point to doing pirate. There's no point to doing armamentalist. The only point to doing monster masher is to recruit monsters, because apparently like the monster masher ability to attract monsters doesn't work if you aren't a monster masher in the original.
It doesn't?
I think I read that somewhere. I don't remember where, so don't quote me on that.
Okay, we need to mention monster recruiting, because that's really annoying. Okay, so in this game you can recruit monsters, but it's not like Dragon Quest V, where you can recruit the monsters and then they're on their team. No, you recruit the monsters and then they go to Monster Meadows,
which was called Monster Park in the original, which I think is cute because it just sounds like it's a zoo, which is what it basically is. It's like the monsters just roam around, and like, you can talk to them and they say really funny things, and like I think it's adorable, because I'm a sucker.
So basically, aside from completionism, the reason why you would recruit monsters is then you can have them search for tablets. And so basically, if you recruit a monster, you can have it in a tablet to grind from whenever you want. So you can recruit a slime, you have a tablet which is nothing but slimes, and then you can get slime drops much more easily. Okay, that's neat. And they added some upgrades to this system in the
3DS,
in the remake, where like you can share tablets through Street Pass and stuff, and that's really, really cool. Here's the problem. Unless if you do certain exploits that again the game doesn't really tell you about, monster recruitment is so stupidly low that you're gonna go hours and hours playing normally without recruiting one. Like, the game kind of tells you that, monster mashers make it more likely, but just having a Monster Masher in your party will make it more likely to recruit monsters, but you're not going to be recruiting them really, really often. You have to use a specific ability from the Monster Masher called Animal Magnetism, and even then, like, if you can use it once and it's not like the monster's guaranteed to join you, you have to use it like 5 times for a guaranteed recruit.
And the game does not tell you that successive uses, like, you don't know, I don't know how people figured out that, yes, successive uses do keep increasing the chance of the monster to joining, and then by the time if you've used it like 5 times, then the monster will is like 99% that they'll join. I don't remember actually if there's been any case where I deliberately used Animal Magnetism over 5 times and the monster didn't join. So,
yeah, but even still, like, if you're trying to recruit, like, say, a Metal Slime, and that little shithead runs away before you get enough Animal Magnetism, because you have to understand that some of these monsters without Animal Magnetism Monster Masher will have like a 1 in 255 chance of recruiting or higher. You know, it's like Dragon Quest. It's even lower than Dragon Quest V, and we complained about monster recruiting plenty in that game.
Yep.
It's just so strange though, because I don't feel like it did as much as it should have.
The monster recruiting?
Yeah, because you can get them for tablets and that's cool, but most of the monsters are just going to be sitting there. And I mean, their dialogue's cute and all, and that's fun, but it's such a huge side quest for something that ultimately, aside from being able to grind a little bit easier, doesn't add that much content.
No.
Like, the download tablets add a lot of content and a lot of replayability because it gives you a reason to turn on the game every week. Those are great.
Because they update every week.
They update every week, and there's special monsters in there from all across the series that you can't encounter in the normal game. The download tablets are fantastic. Yeah. Hard as balls, though.
Oh, yeah.
So, don't even bother with them until you're, in the 30s, I would imagine. And even then, you're going to be running into monsters that are stronger than in-game bosses.
My rule of thumb is always save before you enter the tablet, because that way if you wipe out, you just reset your game. You know, because because you never. That's one problem I have with the Traveler's tablets. I wish they just had a 1 to 5 star rating, so I knew right off the bat. Because sometimes a tablet looks like it's going to be hard, and then it's not. Just looking at, because it gives you there's a name and a picture of a monster, and sometimes the tablet looks like it's going to be easy, like the one with a picture of a jail cat that does not have a jail cat in it. The final boss is much harder than the boss of the tablet is much harder than the actual boss of the game. Ted, this is where you put a picture of the Zenithian Pip.
Oh yeah, the Zenithian Pip is
the
definitely
Colonel.
is definitely harder than the game's final boss.
Oh yeah.
And and also your Okay, here's another thing. Your tablet size, your tablet bag is so stupidly small.
Yeah.
You can only hold 20 of them, and that sounds like a lot, but you're getting tablets from the people, the monsters you recruit to the Haven, which is different from Monster Meadows. We'll talk about that later. So it fills up even before you start downloading 3 or so tablets every week, and you don't want to delete the download tablets because you don't know when those will be back up in circulation online, but you don't want to but you need to get rid of some of them because you don't have space otherwise, and it's just they should have tripled the amount of tablets you can store at any given time. It is just too small.
It's just stupid. So, there's no reason for it. What I end up doing is when I do the download tablets, I bring a Monster Masher and I recruit all of the monsters in the tablet. So at least and I make sure I've recruited all the monsters in the tablet before I delete it. So that way at least I can sort of recreate. You can't technically recreate it perfectly because a lot of them have they use a different they make them differently than you are able to make them in game, but at least I have all the monsters.
Yeah, and one thing about the special tablets that you can download is that they give you really good items, often from completely other Dragon Quest games. So
I got a rainbow drop from one of them, which is an item from Dragon Quest IX that lets you, Dragon Quest I, that lets you go to the final boss. And if you use it in battle, it just shields it basically acts as a 1-turn Qatherine. Basically, it makes it so that your party is completely impervious to damage, but no one else can do anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's some fantastic items you can get. I also got that slime crown, which
Oh yeah, that was
rough still wearing it. But yeah, so there's a lot of things about this game that I just, there's so many things about this game where I just wish I was in the room and could raise my hand and like when they were discussing like the changes for the remake, and I just wish I was in the room to say, sir, don't you think that if we don't let them keep the advanced abilities, it makes Armamentalist and Pirate useless? Sir, don't you think we should have a few more monster tablets, like tablet spaces, since they're going to be downloading so many? Like, I'm just like, why was there no one there who told them that these were, like, simple changes they could have made? But
it's
such is the pain of
frustrating.
it's the pain of any game that is, like, you like, but it's not quite perfect, and you feel like there were easy things they could have done to make it, just better. But
Yeah, that's and again, we should state that this is still a fun game.
I would
It's
not
just-
have, I would not have put 125 hours into the game if it were bad. Like, I enjoyed the game. Like, Ted, I did not put 125 hours into Spyro Enter the Dragonfly, I'll tell you that right now. I don't even remember, probably like 10.
Yeah, but you did put 100 hours into Final Fantasy IV Heroes of Light, though, and I think you told me that wasn't a great game, though.
That game has, I don't know which game has more problems. I think 4 Heroes of Light has more problems because that game has a is it 15 or 10 item inventory, no stacking. It includes your 4 pieces of equipment. Have fun going into dungeons with enough space in your pockets to get all the crap. So yeah, that's kind of our complaining about the various little problems with the game.
Now let's complain about the story. The stories.
Let's talk about the characters.
Yeah, the story.
So,
well, I think we should talk about the characters as we go through the story because we'll actually get most of them out of the way at the very beginning.
well,
the game.
hold on, let's wait. I want to talk about the presentation stuff first, just so people don't.
Oh, okay.
I think it looks. Honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that I've seen DQ11 3DS footage, I would have said this game looks amazing for the 3DS, and I still think it looks great for the 3DS. I'm just amazed at how much more they can do with it on DQ11.
It's just, you have to remember that it's a 3-year-old game at this point, because it came out in 2013.
Yeah.
So, it does look great for the 3DS. I will give it that. Like, one thing I was worried about is that the 3D models wouldn't have as much charm as the 2D sprites, but thankfully, that's not the case, and actually, I feel like that charm is kind of emphasized because there's so many more animations. Like,
yeah.
Each monster has its own specific sleeping animation, or its own animation for when it misses, or a different animation for being knocked out by a normal attack or a strong attack, which is like a critical hit or certain skills.
Yeah, like the difference would be like, okay, like if you killed a Slime Knight with a normal attack, like he just kind of falls back. If you kill him with a strong attack, they fly back. The knight lands on the ground and the slime lands on top of him. So it's really charming. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's lots of cute things like the king slimes, their crowns, kind of fall on their face when they're asleep.
Oh
yeah. They're like these bandit enemies when they fall asleep, like they lie and use their sacks as a pillow.
Yeah.
The game is gorgeous, I will say. The only thing is that I wouldn't play it in 3D because playing it in 3D cuts the frame rate down a lot. So if you care about that, which I know a lot of people don't, but if you do, I wouldn't recommend playing in 3D. Even when you have it off in 3D, there are still some minor slowdown here or there. And also, this is a completely nitpicky thing, but there's no footsteps for the characters when they move around. It's eerily quiet. And it's not, this isn't the nitpickiest of all nitpicks. But once you notice that there's no footsteps, it's hard to unhear it, and it just feels really, really weird.
But there's no footsteps in, like, Dragon Quest 4 or 5, are there?
No, but that's also its 2D game.
Oh, okay.
As it's a 3D. When it's a 3D game, it feels weird, So again, minor nitpick.
I would say my biggest minor nitpick is how slow the menus felt.
Oh yeah, that's true. Like, you don't feel like you can mash through, like if you're in a weak battle and you're like, okay, I'm gonna mash attack and get through it quickly. It feels like there's a slight microsecond delay between being able to move. It doesn't
want to take your inputs as fast as I want to give it. And it's like, I'm just like, dude, I don't care. I just want to mash attack. You know?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that always annoys me in RPGs, especially like it's a Dragon Quest game. You have to grind. Just make it easy.
Yeah. Well, I would say that you don't really need to do a lot of grinding in Dragon Quest VII. Like, early game a little bit, because every Dragon Quest game you're better off going into the first dungeon at level 3 than at level 1, but you don't need to. You grind way more than I feel like you really need.
Probably, but in this game there's also the added aspect of, okay, I'm really close to just mastering this class. Let me just master it so I can switch it. Oh yeah, that's another problem with the class system. If you master a class, you have to go all the way back to All Trades Abbey to change your class. So like, I had instances where I was very deep into a dungeon, like, or halfway through a dungeon on an island in the past, had 2 or 3 characters, all max out classes, so I had to backtrack through the dungeon. I'm pretty sure actually it was in Achilles Vale, which is a really large island.
Oh yeah,
so
you have to walk all the way back to the portal.
Because you can't zoom. You can't zoom when you're in the past. You have to walk all the way back to the portal, go to All Trades Abbey, change your classes, walk all the way back. So
but it's the game's just strange, and the music's good. I wouldn't say it's the best Dragon Quest soundtrack, but it's pretty good. Here's the problem. Okay, in Japan, the game had a beautiful orchestrated soundtrack. Like, absolutely beautiful. I've looked it up. It's fantastic. Koichi Sugiyama-san, and his eternal wisdom and glory, decided, oh, those stupid Americans, they don't deserve orchestral music. So we get MIDI files instead. And it's not terrible.
Is it the same as the PS1 music, or is it...
No, it's a different arrangement. No, the arrangements are probably the same, but it's different instruments in the PS1 version. But we don't get the orchestrated versions, and I don't get why. It's the same thing with DQ8 too.
Yeah, we're gonna get the MIDI versions for the DQ8 remake.
It's
been confirmed.
It's a licensing issue. You know, it's not them trying to censor it. It's not about disk space or anything like that. It's a legal issue, and Koichi Sugiyama just doesn't want us to have nice things.
Yeah,
so...
and we blame Koichi Sugiyama because it's known that he's very protective of his music rights, and he's like heavily involved in some like, I don't know if guild is the right word, or union, but he's very heavily involved in music rights, and like, it's just like, can you guys just we just want to hear the good music, you know? Like, yeah. It's really just, come on, and the MIDI sound fine. But when you hear the orchestral arrangements, it's like going from, chocolate flavored to like real chocolate. It's different.
It's hard to go back. Especially like when you listen to the orchestral versions of like the Sphinx theme or the past and present overworld themes, and they sound so good. It's like you hear the fake trumpets in the overworld theme, like bam, 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 and you're like, okay, this is nice. And then you hear the real trumpets for the present overworld theme, where it actually has the kind of gravitas that theme is supposed to have. And then you're like, holy shit, why couldn't we get this?
What happened?
Yeah. But yeah, the music's fine. It's just
the only real standout track to me was actually the past overworld theme, because I think it had and I would say I liked the theme for the flying theme was good, and maybe a couple other themes, but yeah, I like the past overworld theme a lot.
The only theme that really sticks out to me, the only 2 themes that really stick out to me are the boss theme. Like, the normal boss theme, I actually think that out of all the ones I've heard, it's the best Dragon Quest boss theme.
Yeah, that's really
good.
And yeah.
the Sphinx dungeon theme. It's like the only dungeon in the game that gets its own unique dungeon theme, which is weird, but it's fantastic.
I I vaguely remember
It's
that
the one.
I'll have to look it up later.
It's the one when you're in the spirit of the land idol thing.
Yeah, no, I remember the dungeon. I don't entirely remember the music, but yeah, I'll have to re-listen to it. But yeah, there weren't as many standout, like, there weren't a ton of standout tracks, but, you know, it's fine.
It was okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, the game, the presentation, I'd say, is one of the stronger aspects of the game. It definitely looks nice. But anyway, I think we should start. Oh, I think we should throw up our spoiler warning at this point.
Yeah. This is a long game.
I mean,
like, we're not gonna talk about end game spoilers immediately. So, you know, if you want to hear about the beginning of the game, feel free to listen. But, you know,
I mean, we're already an hour into the discussion because there's so much to talk about the game.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different islands. The big thing about Dragon Quest VII is, as we talked about it, each island is so episodic that, like, for one, having us describe it would probably kind of ruin the thing if you haven't played it for yourself. But also, like, a lot of the islands just don't add anything to the overall plot. Like, this is how this island got sealed away, and this is how you bring it back, and yay, everything's fine. Or actually, no, most of the time everything isn't fine because this game is very depressing. A lot of the times.
Yeah, this game really has a lot of, like, dark themes to it. And one thing I will say that's a problem with this episodic format and the way it's presented is it's made clear very early on that the fact that all these islands from the past are not in the present is the work of the Demon King. And he is mentioned occasionally. And sometimes the individual sort of villains in each island in the past will mention, like, you know, like, oh, the Demon King has instructed me to, you know, or like, oh, Demon King, no, I have failed you, oh. But you don't see the Demon King until you fight him. And it has that, which apparently this is a problem in a lot of the Dragon Quest games, of the villain just is not there. You know, you don't see him doing stuff. So you're just like there, you know, throughout the game, there's just this concept of, like, yeah, there's this Demon King, and I guess we need to stop him at some point. But when you're playing the game, you're more concerned with, like, helping the individual people of each town, and it feels like their problems are not necessarily connected to the Demon King, because there's this, like, you get the feeling there's this chain of command that, like, you know, the little, like, jobber mooks are reporting to, like, the boss mooks, who are reporting to someone who's reporting to the Demon King. And so you don't really feel that much satisfaction from beating up, like, the golem, you know?
You know, like, you know, kind of abstractly, if you look at all the things that the Demon King does, you know, he's one of the most despicable villains in the franchise, considering, you know, all the terrible things that happens to all of the past islands. But what the game really needed is a larger figure, a la Dragon Quest V, that you run into every once in a while in the past.
Yeah.
You know, and it actually could be kind of interesting if they played with the time travel aspect there. Because, you know, one thing that I will say about this game's plot is that thankfully they don't do anything ridiculous with the time travel, and for once the time travel story actually makes sense. Yes. But they kind of imply when you're time traveling about that you're not doing the islands in order, so to speak. So it would be cool if, like, you run into, like, some kind of general, and he, like, recognizes you before you even know who he is.
Yeah,
or something to that effect.
Because people remember you, and there's occasions where people remember that there were these like, people in the present have heard legends of how travelers saved their town, and in one city in particular, they recognize you. Because the legend has been so, like, carefully told that they actually recognize you as their saviors from the past, and they accept it. So yeah, I agree. Like, why don't any of the bad guys know you? What I think would have been great is similar to how Bishop Lodja appeared in Dragon Quest V. If the Demon King just made, like, cameo appearances at some of the islands when bad things happened, you know, you don't need to fight him. Just knowing that, yes, like, here is the guy who is responsible for all this suffering, you know, just, like, to have that presence, because you go to fight the Demon King because that's what you're told to do, but, like, we don't actually, like, know who he is. You know, he is, like, 10 lines of dialogue, and we don't know, like, you know, what, like, was all this, like, really just horrible torture that some people go through his idea, or was it like that the people under him are these like the ones who thought of these really awful ways to kill people or to, just torment their existence? It's that's really the biggest problem for the Demon King with me, is just like you have no idea how much he like is responsible for it, and because the game doesn't tell you, you just kind of feel like he's just kind of like, yeah, whatever guys, have fun. I'm gonna sit on my throne and look fabulous. I am the king of all demons. He looks too much like Angelo. I'm sorry.
But let's start with the beginning of the game, because the beginning of the game is a lot of people have issues with the beginning of the game. Okay, so you start off as this little adorable dork from a fishing village named Biltard Bay on the Isle of Estard. And you're best friends with the prince, Prince Kiefer, and you're also friends, ? With the mayor of Pilchard Bay's daughter, Maribel. Basically you're told at the beginning of the game, Estard Island is the only island in the entire world. And you and Kiefer are like, nah. So you're trying to build so you're trying to build a boat, and that's not going so great. And so, like, through some shenanigans, the prince steals like his mom's wedding ring. Well,
your father finds a tablet fragment, and that's when you and Kiefer get the idea of like, there's this weird shrine of mysteries on the other end of the island. Like, let's faff about there and see if we can like do something with this fragment there. Like, I think you talk to the hermit. Like, there's a problem with the beginning of the game. It's that you go 2 hours.
It's 2 hours long.
2 hours before you fight your first battle, just running around this gigantic overworld with nothing in it but bad draw distance trees.
Yeah, it's okay. So here's the thing: the dialogue is fantastic. All right, that's just Dragon Quest standard. Like, the game is really, really funny. The characters are really, really charming. Like, you really grow. Like, you really grow attached to the town pretty quickly. And, you meet a lot of interesting characters. Like, you meet the Prince and Maribel. You meet Uncle Pike, who's, like, the village fuck up.
Yeah, the village drunk, who is he's your uncle on your father's side. And I love, like, sometimes you'll hear people talking about, like, how your dad came and yelled at Uncle Pike, like, because Uncle Pike got in trouble because he was behind on his rent, so your dad had to bail him out and yelled at Uncle Pike. And there's one, this I think was the moment where I was just absolutely sold on, like, the humor of the game. So at some point, as part of your, like, unlocking the Shrine of Mysteries, you steal this thing called a sizzling stone that Pike has and is, like, showing to people, like, trying to get them to buy it off him. So you steal it from, like, his, like, house when he's not there, and then you go use it, and then you go back to your house for some reason, and Pike's there, and he was like, I believe you have something of mine, and there's a yes/no prompt, and I decided to be a little brat, and I was like, no, and he hits me. He like punches you in the face and takes it back from you, and then if afterwards I talk to my dad, and he's like, why is your face all red on one side?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, my dad said something about, like, what happened. But I guess he didn't see.
You can actually sneak it back into his pocket when he's sleeping.
Pike?
Really? Pike. You can actually sneak it back into his pocket while he's asleep in his bed in Estard.
And he won't notice.
And he won't notice because he's a dumb shit.
You just gave it back to him when he asked, right?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Because I'm not a delinquent. I don't take after my uncle.
I dislike law enforcement with a vengeance. But yeah, I was like, he hit me in the face.
Yeah, so it's the best comparison I can actually give to the beginning of the game too is Zelda Twilight Princess, because a lot of people have the same issue in that, the beginning's too long. I don't care about this town. I just want to play the game. And okay, here's the thing. I really liked the beginning town in Twilight Princess, and I really like Estard in Dragon Quest VII. It's full of charm, there's lots of great characters, even minor ones, like the Cranky Hermit or Princess Lisette. or or the king. But the difference is that at least in the beginning of Twilight Princess, you did have some things to do that sort of resembled Zelda gameplay before, like, you got the big beginning. In Dragon Quest VII, you literally are just walking back and forth the entire time. There's nothing interesting to do in the meantime.
So this actually was another problem where I think, you and I should have been in the room when they were discussing the remake, because they had heard, the developers knew about the complaints about the beginning of the game being slow. Apparently, in the PS1 version, the beginning of the game also had certain puzzles that were involved in, like, getting the things that you need to unlock the ruins. Like, how you just, like, push things, like, once?
Yeah.
There was
basically
more puzzles, and, like, I don't actually know the details of how the puzzles worked, because I haven't played the original. They removed those. So instead, what we got is a slightly shorter intro section where there are virtually no puzzles and a lot of running around, and I would bet you, I don't know what I would bet you. I'm looking around my room, but I don't have anything of value I would want to bet. I would bet you money that it is faster walking from place to place in the PS1 version by virtue of it not being like a 3D game. Because that's the problem. It takes like at least 15 seconds to go from the Shrine of Mysteries to Estard or to Pilcher Bay. And during that time, there's no enemies. You're just walking. I think they might have given you a Chimera wing at some point, but like, I was just hoarding those. I always hoard those things. That's the problem. They took out the wrong thing. They should have made it.
They needed to take out. You don't need as much shit to get to the Shrine of Mysteries. Like, take out some of the extra backtracking and leave in the puzzles. Leave in the interesting stuff. Like, you don't need to go back and forth 12 times to be like, oh, let's try the ring. The ring didn't work. Let's go back. Let's find the Sizzling Stone. Okay, the Sizzling Stone worked. Okay.
It should have made it like you go meet up with Qatherine Estard. He's like, I got the ring. You leave Estard, game black, like, fades to black. Fade back in, you're at the Shrine of Mysteries. I don't need to walk the hero there, Like, that's the boring part.
At least after you've gone there once, Or maybe if you wanted to break up the puzzles, have the ring do some of them and have the stone do other ones. It's just the beginning of this game. I'm not surprised that people got turned off by it because, especially when you compare it, like when you go back to the PS1 era when the game first came out. You compare the opening to, like, say, Final Fantasy VII, which is the big PlayStation 1 RPG, obviously.
Yeah.
And that opening's fantastic.
Yeah, you start off like you're an eco-terrorist. You're, like, setting off bombs and, like, the music. I still love the opening where you're bombing, the music in the Mako reactor bombing mission. That's an amazing piece. But yeah, and then you go to this, and it's just like calm, peaceful village. You're just running around this blank map. La, la, la.
It can work. I'm not saying that it doesn't have the ability to work, because, I know people are going to disagree with this. I think the Twilight Princess opening works, because the Twilight Princess, it's probably about the same amount of time. Like, it's like an hour and a half between starting the game and getting to the first dungeon in that game. So it's about the same length, but I've liked that because they mixed in the world building with stuff that's actually fun to do, at least for me. So yeah, it's frustrating. But that you do eventually, like, you go back to the past, and then you finally, like, you do your first battle with slimes. It's like 2 hours in. But do you want to talk a bit about, like, the general characters that you meet? Because the first two party members you get are Prince Kiefer and Maribel, and we have varying opinions on those two characters. So let's start with Kiefer too, because we kind of agree a little bit more on Kiefer than Maribel.
I just want to say, I really like the hero, because he's like,
the hero's adorable.
He's adorable, and, like, he's implied to have, like, a personality where he's just, like, pretty adventurous, and, like, but he also gets talked into doing things pretty easily. Like, you
Yeah,
know.
that's why Maribel probably likes him, is because he's really easy to push around.
Well, but Maribel always is criticizing him, like, "Ugh, why do you get talked into doing things for people all the time? Like, everyone just asks you to do a favor and you do it. You don't think about anything." And like, she makes fun of his face.
Yeah, but she only complains about that when he's listening to other people instead of her.
Exactly.
Yeah, but he's a rapscallion, I think, is the best. He's like, oh, you little troublemaker, you. He's like that kind of character, and I like him a lot.
See, I was in character when I lied to Pike.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I really like
Kiefer. Kiefer is frustrating because he starts off. I liked him a lot when he started off because he was interesting and well-rounded in that, like, he's supposed to be like 18. And he's still, like, acting like he's 12. And so you understand the frustration that the adults are having to this whole thing. Like, the game says that you're supposed to be, like, 16, 17. You look like you're 12.
Yeah.
I think the game probably should have had you and Maribel and Kiefer be, like, 12 to 14 to 16 range instead of, like, being almost adults.
I do not buy that the hero is, like, 17 or whatever he's supposed to be.
This is like the only anime RPG where I think the characters should have been younger.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So but Kiefer, he's very headstrong, and he's adamant that this is not the only island in the world, and that's really interesting. And like his adamancy-ness, whatever.
Adamant nature boost to attack.
Adamant nature
decrease
boost
in
to
special
attack.
I think.
Yeah, that.
Great for Flareon.
You got it right. Great for Flareon. That, like, it's charming it's charming when you're with him, but you totally get why the king's really frustrated with it. And, you know, he's just kind of the right mix of being charismatic when you're around him, and like there's still room for him to grow as a person as well, because you kind of expect, like, eventually he'll understand, like, that, you know, it's great to have ambitions, but you also have responsibilities, you know, because he's the only he's like well, I'm getting to where the story actually goes.
I was gonna say, like, as a prince, you know, the fact that Kiefer's a prince, first of all, he certainly doesn't act like it. No. In a lot of ways. And, like, I think the sense that you were supposed to get with Kiefer is just he's, like, he really doesn't like having this responsibility forced upon him. Like, he doesn't want to be a king. He wants to explore. He wants, like, adventure. And it's really frustrating to him that, like, because of, like, his birth, he's, you know, forced to he's going to have to become a king. And he really doesn't want that. So in that way, I really feel for him, and I think he's a good companion. But yeah. Then
you get the further plot points, and like it results in him treating characters badly. I think
he ends up seeming very self-centered.
Yes, because especially his dad, the King Donald, and his sister Princess Lisette, like. They worry a lot because, like, Kiefer sneaks out and he's missing for long stretches of time. And his sister is like, oh, I hope he's okay. What happened to him? Where is he? You know, and you see, like, she's really worried and really attached to him. And, like, the king...
Because their mother's dead. I'd like to point that out. Their mother died.
Their mother's dead.
Yeah.
And, like, the king is absolutely furious when, you know, he steals his mom's, like, priceless... irreplaceable jewel ring, you know, that, like, sentimental value to use for some, in his mind, like, silly little thing where, like, it could get lost or stolen or whatever. Like, you understand why King Donald is pissed.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so, like, you kind of get the sense, I got the sense at the beginning of the game that there was a lot of room for him to grow and kind of learn to accept these responsibilities while still keeping that spirit. But then
he basically says, screw that.
No, you get to the point later. We're kind of jumping around a little bit. We'll be doing that, I imagine, because I think we've decided that we're not going to be going plot point by plot point for this one, because it would just take too long. Eventually, you meet this group called the Roamers in one of the past islands, and Kiefer sees a hot chick there, and he's like, oh man, my dick's so hard for this hot chick. I'm gonna get my dick wet so good. Okay, you ready? And then he decides, I'm gonna just stay in the past and completely ignore my family
Screw
that
my
I've grown.
family, screw my duty to the throne. Also, screw the fact that my friends probably, like, need me to help them with, I don't know, saving the entire world.
And there's no reason for him to need to stay, like, time travel, you can leave whenever you want. You can come back.
Well,
they're not going anywhere.
No, they do though, Ted. If you go back, they're gone. So it's
Yeah, that's still, but like, you could get married and you could literally leave whenever and come back and help. Like it's time travel. Like, I mean, it would lead to more plot holes, but like, you don't have to ignore everything, and like never see your family again without so much as a goodbye.
He doesn't even say goodbye.
Like for 20 hours after Kiefer leaves the party, everyone in this Stark Castle is just devastated. Oh, yeah. And it's hard to watch, So that really soured me on Kiefer, because like you really do get the sense that he and the player character are best friends. And like, not only are you like, really, you have to go, but like, it's such a dick move.
Yeah.
And
bros,
and,
they hoes.
To the game's credit, they try to make him more sympathetic later on, because at the very, very end of the game, you find a little message from Kiefer, and he's just like, oh, no matter what, you were always such a great friend to me, which was touching. And after you beat the game, you get a little optional download tablet where you are like a passive observer for Kiefer, and right after he joins, and there's some touching moments there.
And his family gets a bit of closure. His father and sister, more his father actually, do get a bit of closure as to like that that Kiefer is happy with his choice, and that they move on. But I mean
it comes 60 hours too late.
Yeah,
is the thing.
It was just really like, when I was like, I remember I was like, is Kiefer ever coming back? And you were like, nope. And I was like, well then. Man.
And so that's Kiefer. And then we get Maribel, who is very divisive.
Honestly, and in talking with other people who have like played the game, it's not just us. Like, people, other people are very like love or hate with Maribel.
And okay, here's the thing. She's the classic tsundere. She's it's not like I like you or anything.
No, here's the problem with Maribel. She's all Sun. She is never dere. She is just
She's
mean.
Dere once, and she's dere very rarely. You have to kind of read between the lines a little bit with her, which is not always a great thing. Like, sometimes, you like having that ambiguity, but sometimes you need a little bit more context than subtext. There are some lines which actually do feel really touching with her. Like, the one that I can remember, I forget what point in the game it is, but they're talking about, like, I think it's like somebody's mourning somebody after they had passed, and there's a party chat option where Maribel says, would you mourn for me if I ever passed away? And if you say yes, then she says, like, okay, then I guess I'll mourn for you if you ever die too, or something. So you do.
It's bad.
No, it honestly.
I guess
like,
I'll mourn for you if you die.
It seems sincere, because there was none of her. I don't think she said I guess, but then she's like, I think it was like, okay, then I'll do it for you too, or something like that. So it was curt, obviously, but there's not a lot of. You're right, where there's a lot of Sun and not a lot of dere. To put that aside, which makes a lot of people think that she's obnoxious. Qatherine included.
I think my problem with Maribel is I like tsundere characters, but most of the tsundere characters I like have a reason for being tsundere. One of my favorite tsundere characters is Rin from the Fate Stay Night, because she has a good reason for being tsundere. She's a mage. She was taught, like, mages are very solitary people. She had a huge amount of responsibility forced on her from when she was a child. She wants to, like, work with Shiro and trust him, but she's afraid to let him get too close. Maribel is just obnoxious to me. Like, she she complains that you and Kiefer are doing stuff by yourself, and she's like threatening to tell the king what Kiefer's been doing, and basically blackmails you guys into letting her tag along. And then when you guys accidentally go into the past for the first time, she's like, "Get me out of here right now! You take me back home right now!" Like, she just gets so indignant. It's like, you wanted to come along. You're here for the ride, hon.
Here's the thing. It's subtle. Her personality doesn't change, but she does get character growth. In the sense that by the time you get partway through the game, like actually relatively early on, like as early as Reidenstein, she does feel some responsibility in that she wants to help save the world, not just partially just because, you know, of the ego trip nature of it, but also because she knows that she's one of the only people who's capable of doing it at the moment. And you do get that kind of sense. And, you know, personally, like, this is just what I enjoy, but she has some really funny lines.
That is true.
Like,
I will say
she's snarktastic, and it's fantastic.
I will say she's funny when she's snarking at people that aren't me. Like, here's...
Oh, so you just don't like it when your feelings get hurt.
Here's the thing.
What I'm hearing?
There's one line of party chat. It's after someone explains someone tells you something, and she says, like, "Did you understand all that? Were you paying attention?" And you can either say yes or no. No matter what she says, she's like, "Humph," and explains it to you again. So she basically just treats you like an idiot. You know, it's really like...
Well, to be fair, the main character is kind of an idiot, so...
He's quiet, but I never felt like he was an idiot. He's just really easygoing, but that doesn't mean he's an idiot, you know? Like, he never does anything stupid. Unless, like, you make him do something stupid.
All Trades Abbey, getting all of your party stuff getting taken away. That was pretty stupid.
I mean, that wasn't... There was no way he could have known.
Well, Maribel would have done it. Maribel wouldn't have fallen for that trick.
Maribel fell for it, too! She walked
only because... Yeah, but it's obviously, like, this
Maribel.
is...
I just felt like she was so obnoxious. She never... I felt like she warmed up almost... Not at all. Like, she barely warmed up. She, you know, I remember, I think it was in the last part of the game, I forget what she said to me, but one of her party chat lines was so obnoxious that I was like, alright, I'm done. Mervin, get back in the party. Maribel, sit in your room and think about what you did.
Maribel, stat-wise, is better than Mervin. She's got the fastest EXP growth in the game.
She never caught up. She never, even when I had her, I swear, I had Maribel in the party from the time you got Mervin back. Like, but when you had the choice of your 5 characters, had Maribel in the party, never caught up. Always at least.
She caught up.
What was that?
Well, she by the time I got to the mid 40s, she was about caught up for me. And by the time I got to my levels for the post game stuff, she was actually a higher level than Aish, who I had never once taken out of my party. So she's her, and I find her to be a better mage than Mervin because she's faster. And you really want to get those. You really want to get those buffs up quickly. So I think we're in a agree to disagree kind of moment here, because that's just the kind of Caravel is. But you know what? Let's talk about a character who we can totally agree on, who is the best part of the game easily.
Yes.
Ralph. And that's Putrick Stinkenheimer.
Oh yeah, our good friend Putrick Stinkenheimer. No, our favorite character in the game is Ruff, originally known as Gabo. So that I'll just quickly explain for those who don't know. Gabo, or like Gabu, is like a Japanese onomatopoeia for like the sound a wolf makes. Because when he originally joins your party, he can't speak human. So he just makes like,
he's a wolf.
He was originally a wolf, was turned into a human, and then was cursed to stay in that form, and then cursed again to be given the ability to speak human because the guy doing the cursing wasn't very good at it. And so because like originally he doesn't speak, so they just started calling him what he was saying, which in Japanese was Gabu. So in the original translation, they just kept it as Gabo. For the remake, they changed it to Ruff because that's more close to what he would have said in English. Like, because he does say that in his dialogue. He's like, Ruff, Ruff, Ruff.
Yeah, and a lot of people hate the new name, but personally, I think it's adorable.
I think
like,
it's
honestly,
cute,
I don't.
But I also have no attachment to the old name, you know. So
yeah, it doesn't seem to make sense. Like the scene where you name Ruff, it makes sense because he's just like, what do you want to be called? And at that point he can kind of talk because he's like, stay with Hero. And like he actually says words. And then he decides like, so what does he want to be called? And he goes like, Ruff. And like, he's really happy. He's visibly happy about being called that.
Yep.
Like, I don't know like how the hell they translated
they just had him say
Gabo.
And
yeah, but that wouldn't make sense in English, you know?
All those kids who were playing it in English were just like, huh?
Yeah, so, but Ruff is the best character because, for one, he's adorable.
He rides on a wolf so in the original game, he had like a normal sprite, but he's very tiny. Like, I think standing, he probably comes up to like the hero's waist.
I think he's supposed to be like the size of a young toddler, like a kindergartner, pretty much.
He's very short. So, you know, they gave him a normal sprite for the PS1 version, but for the 3DS version, because I think they wanted to keep him small, and they realized like there's no way we can have him walk at the same pace, and he could have done that little scampering thing he does where he runs on all fours. That's pretty cute, but they gave him a wolf to ride on, so he rides on a wolf for like 95% of the game.
And he's like hugs it in his idle animation.
Oh, in his idle animation.
And when you put him in different, and if you put him in different costumes, like the wolf will have like a clown nose when he's the jester, or will be dressed as a sheep in the shepherd, being a wolf in sheep's clothing. And it's and his party chat dialogue is fantastic. Like the best example I can think of is like you're trying to sneak into this bandit space, and the secret passage, the secret password is like the guards will ask you, what direction is Ultrade's Abbey? And you're supposed to answer, get lost, in order to go into the bandit's hideout.
Because you overheard it from another bandit entering.
Yeah, and so Ruff will say, like, no, Ultrade's Abbey is to the north. Why are you being so mean? Yeah, and he doesn't get it. And his dialogue, he's always hungry. His dialogue is fantastic.
Yeah.
And he's just got so much charm to him that it's impossible not to love him. He lights up every scene that he's in. And he's precious. He's too pure for this world. I
want to see it grow up strong and healthy. I want to protect it. I want to tell my friends and neighbors about it. He is so, like, I think Ted said once when we were talking about how much we love Ruff, Ted said, he is what would happen if, like, a puppy was turned into a human. Because he acts like a puppy in every way. Like, just easily amused, easily distracted, doesn't understand a lot of things, always hungry. Like, he's so cute. He's so funny. Like, there's one part in the game where the main character can get a puff, and afterwards Ruff will say, like, herf, why is your face all red?
He's just precious. Like, I don't really know how much more we have to say. Like, I really like his chapter too, because Larka, I think, is one of the better towns. Like, you find out that all of the town has been cursed, and all the humans have been turned to animals, and all the animals have been turned to humans. So you walk around and you see like a chicken behind the counter of the item shop, and you can still buy items from the chicken, and he's just like bark, and then it suddenly the item thing pops up. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, there was another in. Do you remember in Providence there was that whole thing where everyone's souls got taken, and then they got put back? But there's a side thing where there's a guy and his cow, and the man and the cow, the souls got mixed up.
Oh yeah, so now the cow can talk.
Yeah, the cow can talk, and the person is just like moo. And if you Ruff's party chat, it's like sniff sniff. Yup, that's definitely a cow.
my favorite thing about that though is that if you go back to the present, like you find the descendants of them, and like that family's like really in touch with cows.
Yeah, and they talk like they say something about like moving. That's also the village where in the present there's two kids trying to milk a cow, and then the party observes that the cow is male.
Oh. Ew.
And I think I don't know if this was, I can't remember if Mervyn said this in the remake or if this was just in the PlayStation version. Apparently Mervyn says something about milking many a teat in his day.
Ew.
Should we talk about Mervyn then?
Here's the thing. Mervyn, the other two... Here's the thing. Okay, sorry. Here's the thing.
Okay.
The first main... Okay, I'm sorry. I needed a moment to collect my thoughts.
No, I'm just joking.
The first full party you get, which is the hero, Kiefer, Maribel, and Ruff, has a lot of personality. You know, whether or not you like said personalities is up for debate. But, you know, you can't deny that Kiefer, Maribel, and Ruff are all very memorable and endearing to some extent characters. Then you get Mervyn and Aish, who's the next character, who we'll talk in more depth about in just a bit. And they're not nearly as interesting. Now, I'll give Mervyn some slack, because they actually did try really hard with Mervyn. Like, he talks in kind of the Elizabethan old Dragon Quest kind of style.
Because he is from the past when the Almighty fought the Demon Lord a long time ago, and the Almighty was apparently defeated. Mervyn was the Almighty's, like, strongest warrior, and the Almighty sealed Mervyn inside a stone so that he could help fight the Demon Lord at a later time.
Yeah, so he brings like a lot of like he's got a lot of like there's occasions where he has some interesting observations, and like there is some funny stuff, like whenever you go into a casino he talks about how terrible his luck is all the time at these kinds of things. But a lot of the time it just kind of feels like he doesn't add any perspective to it. Like he just kind of states the mission that you're supposed to be on in Elizabethan kind of talk, you know? Like he doesn't add any interesting perspective in the way that even Maribel or Ruff like has his childlike perspective, or even Maribel has a unique perspective for a lot of things.
Maribel
like
just snarks, so that's at least unique.
Yeah, but Mervyn doesn't really have anything unique to say about anything, you know? He's just like, oh, we must help these poor people, for thine situation is grave indeed. And it feels like that could be 80% of all of his party chat. And, I mean, granted, there are other instances that are amusing or like, profound in a way, but it's not... And it also doesn't help that I didn't really know what to do with him battle-wise.
Yeah. Like,
he didn't have a... Like, because most of the characters have a pretty set kind of role. Like, the hero's good physically, Maribel's good magically, Ruff is very fast, so he's good for, like, monsters and support spells. Aish is also another really great physical attacker. Mervyn, like, he's got good magic and okay physical stats, so you don't really know what to do with him a lot of the time, I felt.
I kind of felt like that with Aish as well, because she already, when you get Aish, she is the dancer class maxed, so it seems like a waste not to use it, but she really isn't great at magic, you know?
No, her physical attacks are, like, I think the best in the game. Yeah. I think she might even be better than the hero.
She's a champion now, and she's great, like, in my party.
Yeah, she is fantastic. Like, it's just, obviously, for plot reasons, Aish needed... It makes sense for Aish to be maxed in Dancer. But, like, she's just... You should not have her in anything other than, like, anything... You shouldn't bother with her magic skills, because they're just... She's not as good as other characters, you know? So,
I still made her a priest just so she could get, like, Zing.
Oh, everybody should be a priest.
Yeah. But, if you somehow got this far and you haven't played the game and you're planning on playing the game, make everyone master priest, because then you get everyone has full heal, everyone has Zing.
Yeah. So that's a fantastic idea. Because priest is also one of the fastest ones to level up too. Like, you'll get that. You'll get through that in like 2 dungeons, easy.
But yeah, so
Mervyn,
I liked Mervyn. I thought I thought his personality was okay. I felt like there was enough party chat that was interesting. I feel like the complaints you have about Mervyn are like 50 times worse with Aish, because Aish...
Yes, true. I agree 100%.
And Aish was so promising at first when you met her, because you find out Aish is supposed to be the dancer for the roamers, and she doesn't want to. She wants to explore the world by herself and like become a warrior, and fight and stuff. And they're like, oh, so no, you're the dancer.
So she's basically Aish is Kiefer's descendant, which is like implied through the main game, but blatantly stated when you get the bonus tablet.
Yeah.
After you beat the game.
Yeah.
Aish was set up to be like a better Kiefer basically, in all ways. But as soon as you get her, as soon as she officially joins your party, any trace of personality she has is wiped away completely.
She has like virtually no personality. Like, just her party chat is like, state the thing, make an obvious observation about the place. You know, it's just like piece of wood. It's so sad because there's so many great female characters in Dragon Quest. Like, that's one thing I've really enjoyed about the series with the games I've played, with 4 and 5. And from what I've seen of 8, Jessica seems like a great character. But Aish is just like a piece of wood. Like, just so bland. And it's so unfortunate because I saw a spark when, you first meet her. Like, I thought she seems interesting. And then she joins, and, because party chat, is where you get the character personalities. They really shine. Because in a lot of cutscenes, your party members don't do much. They stand around, and you're just kind of observing the world around you. That's normal.
That's just Dragon Quest.
Yeah. But, so that's what party chat is there for. And then in our party chat, it's just like, I'm going to state the obvious. I'm going to, oh, it's a town. We're in a town.
Yeah.
We should do the thing. Let's do the thing.
You want to know what makes the whole thing kind of worse is that there's 5 characters in the game. 5 playable characters. Not including Kiefer, who you lose at the very beginning.
Yeah, Kiefer's gone. Kiefer never comes back.
So, you play through the beginning of the game. You start... Okay, so once you get to real gameplay, you start with Hero, Kiefer, and Maribel. Soon after, you get Ruff. Then Kiefer leaves. You go to Altrade's Abbey. After a little bit, you get Mervyn. Okay? And so
Party
for
of
a good
4.
while, your party of 4 is Hero, Maribel, Ruff, Mervyn. Then, at a certain point, they decide they wanted to add Aish into the game. But they realized, oh shit, we can't have more than a 4-person party. We need to find a way to get one of these characters gone. Maribel, your dad just got sick because reasons. Okay, Maribel's out of the party for no good reason.
Maribel, your dad is worried sick about you, and now he's actually sick. You need to go home and stand uselessly at his bedside to comfort him.
So then, like, immediately after you lose Maribel, you get Aish. Like, no battles are in between that spot.
No, it's like you leave Pilcher Bay, and they're like, oh, I heard that the roamers are around here. We should go, check on them. You go there, and Aish is throwing a temper tantrum, and then she joins your party. Whoop-de-doo.
So, and then, you go through, and then for a good while, that's your party of 4. Hero, Aish, Mervyn, Ruff. And then, you get to the false ending, quote-unquote, and then Mervyn leaves, and then you've got Hero. Mervyn actually gets a cool kind of solo adventure, which I liked.
That. I thought that was super clever.
What I thought would have been cool is if you alternated between the two parties more. Like, okay, he opened up the way to go to one area. Okay, the heroes clear that area. Mervyn opens up the way to the next area. Like, that would have been cool, but they don't elaborate on that concept anymore.
Yeah, that's what I was expecting when it started. Like, I thought, okay, Mervyn's gonna unlock one of the things. But then that was it. He unlocked one of the things, and then we unlocked the other 3. And I was like, oh.
But anyway, yeah. So after you go through the section with Hero, Aish, Maribel, Ruff, suddenly you can get Mervyn back. Well, no, actually, I think it's you get Mervyn back. Maribel goes back to her house, and then you have 5 characters. You can only have 4 in your party.
The
so
excuse
one person's
they give, I would like to point out, their excuse is that your mode of flying transport, it's too small. We can't have 5 people in there. It's too crowded. Okay. I'm sorry, princess. Scooch over. Ruff can sit on my lap. He's adorable.
Well, what about the wolf?
The wolf can ride on top. Kaboo!
So it's frustrating because I know that Dragon Quest has always had 4 characters in a battle. It's been this way since Dragon Quest III. They're probably never going to change it. But having 5 in a battle, I think, would have been cool. Either don't have 5 characters, which is such an awkward number, or give us more characters so that actually choosing our party means something. You know?
And there's no wagon like in Dragon Quest 4 and 5 so that people who aren't in the active party can get experience points. No. When you're at that point of the game where you have 5 characters and have to choose 4, the 5th one sits in Maribel's room and does nothing. They don't get any XP, so they're going to fall behind.
No XP and no job experience.
No job
either,
progression. So. And what's really stupid too is there are points in the game where an NPC can join your party. Some of these points where an NPC joins your party occur when you have a full party of 4. So there are 5...
And the NPC will do attacks.
Yep, there are 5 people on your side. The NPC is AI controlled, but they will do attacks. You can see all 5 people on screen. I was like, at that point, just make it 5 characters or write someone out for good. Don't make it this awkward thing where I have to decide who's better. Like, who am I going to use?
Okay, they decide to write out Ruff.
No! Give him back.
But yeah, I agree. So, since we talked about the characters, I think what makes the most sense is to talk about some of the highlights.
Yeah, the islands that were really good. I actually think the first island was a pretty strong one as far as, like...
Oh, Ballymolly is that one's... Yeah, that one was great. I loved the story with Maeve that they had. It was heartbreaking.
Yeah, so you find out that Maeve, who was originally helping you, was actually the demon responsible for everyone's trouble. And she doesn't want to be, really, and you fight her, but she actually doesn't attack you. Like, she basically just lets you kill her. And it's really heartbreaking. And I think it did a really good job showing how the heroes, like, the 3 characters, like, originally this was a game, right? And then they realized, like, this isn't a game anymore. This is, like...
Yeah, it sets the tone for the rest of the past islands, because this game's depressing. This game is, like, okay. One thing that I like about in stories is a sort of bittersweetness to a lot of things. Like, I don't like... Unless if it's done particularly well, I'm not a fan of just sad, depressing endings. But, obviously, like, you get tired of, oh, they saved the day and everyone lived happily ever after and nothing bad happened, In a lot of the towns, when you save the town, there's still... that just because you cleared the town of darkness doesn't mean that everything's right. Like, for instance, with Maeve... Like, okay, you saved the town from darkness and you brought all of the missing people back to town, but, Maeve still lost her dad, and it was her dad that died. Yeah, Maeve's dead. I thought it was
her brother.
Her brother. Oh yeah, it was her brother. Like, her brother still got brutally killed, and, Maeve didn't get any, like, she still had to deal with that, and there really wasn't any justice.
And wasn't there a little boy, like, who was Maeve's friend?
And you can lie, and I think you end up lying to him as well, in order to not let him, like, you don't tell him that Maeve was the bad guy the entire time, because, so, obviously I love that kind of bittersweetness. It's really touching. The problem is that nearly every island has that, so by the time you get halfway through the... I'd say most islands have that, and it gets exhausting emotionally.
I'm looking at the list, and I don't know. I think a lot of them have a more, like, up ending.
I don't know. I feel like the game emphasizes the down parts, because
the down parts stick. The down parts stick the landing better than the... Well, I guess things are like Emberdale. Like, do you even remember what happened at the end of Emberdale? Because it was one of those, like, and everything's okay.
Yeah, but that was like the second island, though. Like, you get Regenstein right after that, and Regenstein's depressing. Like, everybody's dead in Regenstein. Like, you clear the area of darkness, sure, but the Grey Rain turned literally everyone to stone, and there's only one kid left who survived.
An old man. Because they were turned to stone, and the stone statues have been outside for so long that their bodies have been, like, weathered away to the point that they can't be restored,
Yeah.
Good thing that didn't happen in another Dragon Quest game.
Yeah. But then you, like, okay, Larka is,
Larka's happy.
Larka's pretty happy, but you also get Ruff in that. But then you get like Faraday Castle, for instance.
Faraday Castle
where...
was bittersweet because everyone was saved, but the whole thing with
Ellie.
Oh my gosh,
like,
that made me cry. I think at least a little bit.
Yeah.
I cried.
Yeah, where like she's like serving she's serving her master even though he's been dead for
he's
hundreds
a pile
of years.
Of bones, and she's still like she's still barely running, but she's like trying to reheating him soup. And they like at least they put her back though. That was what I was glad about.
But like but like also like there's a lot of people who die in Faraday Castle.
Yeah.
And then after that you get Green Thumb Gardens where, you know, nobody ends up happy because
freaking soap opera.
Yeah, it's the freaking soap opera which ends depressingly. And then after that Kiefer leaves. Yep. After that, you've got Altrade's Abbey with its depressing thing with the soul-stealing sword.
Oh, yeah.
And then after that, you've got the
Albalad.
Hold on. Albalad.
The desert.
The desert where, you know, you've got like at that point, you've got 3 islands in a row that were really, really depressing. That's like a good 8 hours of gameplay.
I didn't find Green Thumb Gardens that depressing.
You spend like a good half hour sitting there, and it was just like I was really frustrated because I was just like, tell her what you feel, you idiot. But it's like almost nearly all of these areas have this depressing kind of tinge to them, and it left me emotionally exhausted at certain points.
It's very odd for a Dragon Quest game. Like normally there's some of that, but not just like a run of so much like, you know, really sad stories in a row.
I think what makes it worse is that the sad stuff is really, really depressing. Like for example, Buckingham, where the newborn kids get turned into demons.
Yeah.
That's fucked up. That is serious. And like the kids like are still like trying to spend time with their parents before they eventually like just become full-on monsters. And like everybody in the town is like mortified that somebody's still pregnant or whatnot. And then you got Wiggles.
Oh my gosh.
Wiggles!
Not Again was the one town where actually I really hated the localization thing because they gave everyone a Valley Girl accent. And I was like, guys, this is actually like a really good story. Like, it's really distracting when everyone's just saying like, worst town ever.
Wiggles.
So what I think is interesting that I didn't find out until afterwards is you can actually completely screw up Not Again. Because Not Again is like the town where everything goes wrong. Like first there are demons in the town. Like literally just in the town. One of them is running the shop and like will sell you stuff, but he doesn't actually sell you stuff.
That you can spend money and you'll be like, oh yeah, I put it in your bag. You check your bag, it's not there.
Yeah.
He just steals from you.
Yep. And so, okay, like you defeat the guy who's in charge of the monsters. Okay, you go back to the present. There's nothing there. That seems funny. So you go back to the past and you find out the malign vine, which they'd mentioned as being a problem in the past. Oh no, that's a problem again. And then
Rocky sacrifices himself.
So the mayor,
he was adorable.
Was it
adorable. I think Buddy was the mayor. Yeah. So
this guy
like
Buddy who's the mayor, and he has a pet rock bomb named Rocky. Who stayed
I think
around.
the rock bomb was one of the monsters who had been living in the town.
Yeah.
And he just kind of stuck around after all the monsters left, and everybody was just like, okay. He sacrificed.
He was living in Buddy's house, and he uses kamikaze and sacrifices himself to save Buddy. So so you defeat the malign vine, great. Go back to the present, Not Again still isn't there. At this point, you're like, not again. So then you go back to the past again. You find out Buddy has adopted a new pet, which is I forget what it's called. I think it's called a blight crawler is the enemy name. It's a little green worm. In the original, it was actually called Chibi. In the retranslation, they called it Wiggles.
I think it might have been named something like Chibi in Japanese, so it's supposed to be like he's calling it like a cutesy name, even though it's not cute. So I think that's why they called it Wiggles. It makes sense.
Chibi honestly is a funnier. I think Chibi's kind of a more sensical name for what comes later. But
I think the only thing is that it sounds more quote unquote Japanese.
It's very Japanese.
And I mean,
they wanted it to be accessible.
I mean, granted, it's mostly JRPG fans and people who know something about Japanese culture who are playing Dragon Quest, but I think, like, ideally they kind of want kids, like, normal kids, to be playing it, so, you know.
Yeah. But anyways, so Wiggles is a little, like, worm monster, and everyone in town is getting really nervous about Wiggles after their past experiences with monsters, and they say, like, Wiggles keeps getting bigger, and they're really worried. And they ask your party to kill Wiggles. At this point, you can either agree to kill Wiggles.
Why would you do that?
Or you can, because you don't know. You don't know that he is the savior of us all. Or you can tell Buddy, like, you need to, like, get rid of let Wiggles free, or the villagers will kill him. So I, like a normal person with a heart, I was like, no, I don't want to kill Wiggles. So I told Buddy, and then you go out at night, and he takes Wiggles, like, to, outside of the town, and he leaves Wiggles there, and it's, like, the most depressing thing, because Wiggles is like, eek!
And he's like, I know, I loved you, but it's just, they don't understand.
They don't understand you, Wiggles, and it's so sad. And then you go back to town, oh no, these evil worms called the Worms of Woe are attacking the town, and they're actually pretty tough. They have like at least a few, like they have a few hundred hit points, and they're pretty tough. And soon your party gets pretty, like, in cutscene, you're overwhelmed by them. Wiggles comes back and fights off the Worms of Woe like a boss, and then dies from
dies for our sins.
He dies. So yeah, now what's funny, okay, so, and then you go back to the future, the present, and, Not Again is there, and there's a memorial of Wiggles, because the town, like, called Wiggles their savior, but everyone has forgotten in the long time that has passed, everyone has forgotten that Wiggles was a worm, so they think he's, like, some brave hero.
It's... Was it this town or the other Russian-y town where they completely forget that you had anything to do with it? Or was it both?
We can talk about
it was probably
we can
both.
talk about no, they forgot about you in
okay.
Not Again. So
talk about what happens if you decide to be a Judas and an asshole.
So if you agree to kill Wiggles, instead of going to Buddy's house and telling Buddy and then, like, getting Wiggles out of the town, you go to Buddy's house and you fight Wiggles. If you go ahead and kill Wiggles is dead. Worms of Woe attack. Your party is overwhelmed again. Like, regardless of how strong you are, your party is completely overwhelmed by the Worms of Woe, and you're forced to flee the town. And Not Again is gone for good. Not Again is not restored in the present. Not Again cannot be fixed. If you kill Buddy, if you kill Wiggles, the town is, like, gone. It's complete. You cannot restore it. I mean, that's dark.
Wiggles!
He was the savior they did not deserve.
And on the third day, he rose again in Monster Meadows and brought peace to us all.
So I told Ted, I found out, I'm working on confirming if this is still true in the 3DS version. In the PlayStation version, if you recruited every single monster in the game to Monster Meadows, you got an item that's called Memento of Chibi, and it allowed you to summon, like, in battle, if you used it, it summons a group of Worms of Woe, worms like Wiggles, to attack the enemy. So, I want to get it.
It's too sad. I can't handle it anymore. Wiggles. Yeah, but...
That was a great town.
Yeah, there is so much great stuff to Dragon Quest VII. Like, obviously we've had our frustrations. There's great stuff to it, and if you are a Dragon Quest fan and haven't played it, I do recommend playing it.
I don't think this
It's
should
like,
be anyone's first Dragon Quest game, though,
no,
probably. Like,
I
if
don't
they
think
want to
so.
get into the series, like, don't do this one because, number one, it's so long. Number two, I don't think it's what Dragon Quest. It's different. It's not
Yeah.
a bad different necessarily. Like, I still applaud them for trying a lot of the things they did. But if you want to know what Dragon Quest is about as a series in general, this game is very different, you know?
Yeah, I can honestly, I can easily imagine, like, due to its quirks, this could easily be someone's favorite Dragon Quest, I could think, if they like the weird nature of a lot of it. But if you want something more traditional for Dragon Quest, you're probably better off starting off with 3 or 4.
Or at
I
this point,
would
if
imagine.
you're, if somehow you're this long into the video, you're probably like, I don't know, doing something else. And you haven't played a Dragon Quest game before, wait for 8, because at the time of this recording, 8 is the 8 3DS remake is coming out in only less than 3 weeks. You know,
Yeah.
go ahead, get 8, because it's
Yeah.
going to be new, and that, as much as it sucks, like, day one sales actually matter a lot for future
Yeah.
localizations. So, support the new release, get a game that everyone has told me is amazing. Get a game that's a pretty traditional Dragon Quest game with a lot of, some new features, but
Yeah, we haven't played 8, just for clarification, but that's the one that all the people who don't normally play Dragon Quest have played, and they're like, oh man, this game's so good, even though we haven't finished it, looking at you, Mr. Game Explain. But, like, I'm excited to play it because it looks very solid and well made, I think is the best thing.
So there's one other thing I definitely want to talk about, which is the really weird thing that happens at the end of...
I know what you're talking about.
So I would like to clarify for people that on the PlayStation version, like many RPGs, Dragon Quest had multiple discs. Dragon Quest VII. Dragon Warrior 7 had 2 discs. So there's a part in the game where in the present they find some cave. Actually, this sounds a lot like Dragon Quest IV, where you found Astark and Mammon. So they find a cave. You go into like what basically seems like hell. You go down for a while. You find this strange, flamboyant-looking monster guy, who it turns out is Orgodemir, the Demon King. And you fight him, and he turns into like this. Apparently, it's supposed to be a dragon.
That thing's supposed to be a dragon? It's like a centipede.
I know, but you can apparently you can use Dragon Slash and get dragon damage from it. Like, it treats it like it's a dragon for damage calc.
Okay.
So apparently I think it's either in his Dragon Quest IX or like Dragon Quest Monsters description of Orgodemir, it says like he's embarrassed by his dragon form, so he disguises himself as a dashing young dandy. I think he kind of failed it on both fronts, actually. Because I don't find the codpiece dashing Orgodemir. So you fight Orgodemir, and you go, like, everyone's really happy. You defeated him. Woohoo! Almighty, you go restore the Almighty, the god of the game. So that boss fight with Orgodemir is at the end of disc 1. Interesting.
It's a 3-disc game.
No, 2 disc.
Two discs?
2 disc.
Oh, okay. All right.
At the end of disc 1 of 2. Interesting. So there's various things that happen. There's a Cathedral of Light that's constructed, and you go to the Cathedral of Light, and after a variety of events pass, you basically find out you don't appear to have restored the Almighty. That does not.
No, the Almighty just. The Almighty turns out to be evil. Now, I would like to point out, just for posterity's sake, that obviously there's no discs in the DS version, so, like, Qatherine actually thought that she had beaten the final boss?
Yeah, because Ted was significantly... I think Ted was always ahead of me when we were playing the game.
I just had more free time than you.
And so by the time, like, Ted had already beaten... I don't know if you'd beaten the true final boss by the time I beat Orgodemir, the first fight with Orgodemir, but you knew, but you didn't tell me. You kept me unspoiled, so I thought I'd beaten the boss. I was really excited. You're like, good job. You were like, there's a lot of post-game stuff, so, you'll be able to do that. I'm like, oh, great. And then I was, it's weird because there's a lot of stuff that happens after, you beat the game and there's no credits. And there weren't credits, right? I don't remember.
No, there weren't credits. They like kind of fake you out and play the Dragon Quest theme like there's about to be an ending.
And I don't I don't believe you get experience from the first fight with Orgrimmar, which is traditional in Dragon Quest games that you don't get any experience or gold from the true final boss, because there's no point.
Yeah.
So okay, it seemed, and then I'm like, wait, I don't think this is the final. I don't think it's over. And you're like, yup, it's not over.
Yeah, because you go like a good hour, 2 hours, because they're like, okay, we beat the Demon King, now we've got to revive the Almighty, and you're like, okay. And then there's like a whole bunch of politics with the Romer tribe, and you got to go through another dungeon, and there's still random battles, and you're like, what? So
this is taking a while, and then you go explore the Cathedral of Light, and then you talk to the Almighty, and he's like,
and he ends up being like, oh, you must worship none of the great spirits. We must put down all of our weapons and only look to me for guidance. And you're like, oh, you're a douchebag.
I was like, this seems like real Old Testament God stuff. And what I thought they were going to pull at first, I thought they were going to pull that, like, the Almighty was actually evil, or the Almighty had become, like, corrupted by Orgrimmar.
That's what I thought they were going to do, too.
Yeah, but it turns out it's just that, no, we didn't resurrect the Almighty. Orgrimmar was not actually defeated. Orgrimmar, like, lost the battle and then decided, I'm going to pretend to be the Almighty and, like, screw things up. Which I was really disappointed. I thought it would have been
a massive drop ball.
Yeah, I think it would have been so much better if the Almighty, like, it would have been such a, like, a genre-defying thing if it was, like, the one you were trying to revive was evil or had been, like, corrupted to the point of no return by the by the Orgrimmar.
Like, I don't think it needs to be so dark as to, like, the Almighty will never come back, because that's a little bit too Shin Megami Tensei for Dragon Quest in my opinion. But, like, if you had to save the Almighty from the corruption of the Demon King, like, I think that would have been really cool. Like, if they didn't just pull a cop out and have it, oh, it was actually the Demon King the whole time, because for a good while I thought, like, I didn't expect them to pull, like, oh, it was just the Demon King. I was like, is the Almighty was he really bad the entire time?
Exactly.
Like, they leave you hanging for a bit, and by the time you restore all of the present islands back from darkness, it's just like, oh, nope, I was really the Demon King the whole time, la-di-la-di-la, Cathedral of Light, more like Cathedral of Blight.
Am I right? Yeah. I'll see you guys later. I gotta get some purple clothes now for my next boss fight with you.
So
it was a fun twist. Yeah. I just felt like a few things with this game, they didn't quite use it as well as they could have.
It's a weird game, I think. It's like, I think just to start wrapping up, we actually kind of mentioned most of this stuff earlier, but it's worth playing if you're a Dragon Quest fan. I will say that much. Like, you certainly get a lot of content for your money, so that's great. And there's things to like, but there's just so much weird stuff about it that kind of keeps me from recommending it as wholeheartedly as I did 4 and 5. Mm-hmm. Where those were fantastic games, this is a pretty good game.
Yeah. I think your mileage may vary with Dragon Quest VII. I could easily see people liking this game, and I could see people who like other games in the Dragon Quest series but don't like this game. I liked it. I don't know entirely why I liked it, but yeah, I've certainly got a lot of mileage out of it. But it tries a lot of weird things, and some stick the landing and some don't. But it's, if you get it, you're getting a lot of game for your money, so that's always good.
Yeah, and I mean, if you wanted to play a Dragon Quest game in between this and 8, I would not recommend 7. But like, obviously there are generally game release droughts. This is not a bad one to pick up, if you're in between releases and waiting for something to come out, I do think that if you're a Dragon Quest fan, you should get to it eventually. It's not something like Dragon Quest II, where I think that you could skip entirely without missing anything of real value. This is something I think you should get to eventually. It's just, I don't think it's a priority,
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, this actually ended up being shorter than our DQ5 discussion, which I'm not surprised.
No, me neither.
But in the slightest, it's there's less to talk about.
Yeah,
I think.
And there's plenty of islands that we haven't talked about that did have really good like stories to them. Like one we didn't talk about was like Aklos Vale or Volgograd. I really like the stories in those. And there's this whole like subplot actually with the hero. The fact that the hero is like they never really like discuss properly. Yeah, that your father and mother are not actually your father and mother. You were a infant in you were a fetus in someone else's womb, and then somehow you were born to your mother, even though you're not her child, and then you find your father, but it's never actually like your father and your real father, your birth father, and your adoptive father meet and they talk, but it's not made clear whether your birth father tells your adoptive father, like, by the way, he's my son by birth.
It's brought up late. Like, there's hints of it throughout the game. Like, you've got this mark on your hand, and it will glow. And it's the same kind of thing that Aish has, because it's like, oh, each of these spirits has like a chosen one or whatever, and you're like the water spirit's chosen one, but it never goes anywhere.
No.
It felt like it was half written.
There was no closure. And the thing that really pissed me off was you find out when you go to Buckingham that your birth mother, the mother who was carrying you, so she was afraid her husband and your father, Captain Shark Eye, was frozen in ice by the Demon King, because he was fighting, basically fighting the Demon King. He was frozen in ice, and his wife, Lady Anais, I don't know how to pronounce it, she was told like that the ice would not thaw until the Demon King was defeated, and she didn't know when that would be. So she agreed to become like a mermaid, in exchange for her, like, she would have eternal life, but she would only become human for 1 day a year, and she would age on that day. So she was hoping that she would live long enough to be able to see her husband. So she does see him in the credits. Guess who isn't there? Their son. You never meet your mother, even though
they keep it ambiguous for the record. Like, you're never. It's heavily implied, but it's never straight up told to you that you're Captain Shark Eye's son.
No, he says that.
So
he says that when he's talking to you. When he's talking to you on the ship. When you meet him and he's talking to you on the ship, he takes you by, like, you go alone with him outside, and he looks at the mark and he realizes you're my son.
I thought that they kept it more ambiguous than that, but it also has been a long time since I played it, so...
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's told to you that you're his son.
It feels... It's underdeveloped. It's like something that they made to be a bigger deal and had to cut, or they just didn't work it all the way in. It's frustrating. I will say that the ending scene itself is very touching, with you, Maribel, and Pollock, I don't know, one of your dads.
The father who raised you.
Yeah, you're on the shipping boat, and like there's the sunset, and it's a touching ending. I mean, it's a little bit less effective because I had to watch it 3 times because I didn't find the post-game tablet in the victory horror, but whatever. But yeah, it's Dragon Quest VII is strange, I guess. But I think that we'll probably are gonna want to do a talk on DQ8 when we both finish that, and that game's probably gonna be a hell of a lot shorter than 7, which is weird, but I'm looking forward to that a lot, especially considering how charming Angus and Jessica were when we played Heroes.
Yes.
Because I was surprised at how much I liked Angus in particular. I didn't think I'd care too much about him, but he ended up really winning me over. So,
yeah,
that game, I'm looking forward to it.
And there's various things I've gleaned about DQ8, and like just some of the there's some pretty dark stuff in that game, and I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, that should be a fun ride.
Okay, so anyway, we'd like to thank you all for watching another several hour long Ted and Qatherine ramble.
Ted, do you think do you think by the time the two of us have played all the Dragon Quest games, do you think we'll have a full 24-hour playlist? We should make a playlist at this point.
But that takes like work.
Oh my gosh, it's so easy. I wonder.
I wouldn't be surprised, like
at this rate. Yeah, I think we might hit.
Well, it depends on how long. Like, if we play all the games or if we do discussions on some of the spin-offs, I think we'd get close. We'd get pretty close, you know. So.
Oh yeah, wasn't Kiefer in one of the Monsters games or something? Caravan Heart.
I think the GBA one he might have been. I don't remember. I know so little about Monsters as a whole that
we should play the one with Terry.
No.
But he's cute.
Anyway, the next game we're probably going to do is 8. After that, I don't know if we're going to want to take a break from DQ and play something else. We'll see.
Well, to be fair, we have almost 3 weeks until 8 actually comes out, so.
Yeah, that's true. So we want to do 8
stay tuned.
Next. I think you said for replays, you wanted to do, well, not replays, but for going back to older games, you wanted to do 6 after 8, right?
Yeah, because 8's so close to coming out. I'm just going to wait and play 6 after 8.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, yeah, but in the meantime, you know, we have quite a bit of Dragon Quest Heroes recorded. We will, hopefully that playthrough will continue uploading consistently. So I hope you enjoy watching us fail at that.
Yeah. And Qatherine is going to be streaming Dragon Quest Builders when she has the time. And I will hopefully be able to find more time to stream DQ3.
Don't make promises, Ted, about me streaming.
That's why I said hopefully.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So hopefully we'll be able to keep you all entertained with DQ for the foreseeable future. Yeah, this was fun. We've been trying to end for like a half hour, and it just hasn't been happening. So I'm just going to do it right now. Good night, everybody.